pointed out in the last segment, that case in California illustrates the dangers of our social services system. Again, I'm not saying that they don't have a place, don't have a role. I'm not saying we ought to allow children to be abused with no intervention to protect them. Not saying that at all. What I am saying is that there is a totalitarian danger in these child protective services. They've got to be watched like hawks because this child could have wound up being taken away from parents who obviously loved her, cared about her best, and the mother could have been labeled for the rest of her life as a child abuser with all kinds of negative consequences come along with that. We've been talking about Russia's President Putin saying all these wonderful things about Christianity, things that we have never heard once come from the lips of our own president. Love to know what you think about those things. Focal Point, AFR Talk is the program. The number is 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. Let's go to Terry in New Albany, Mississippi. Terry, welcome to Focal Point. What's on your mind?
Well, I'd just like to share how my daddy used to discipline me, and he's been dead 17 years now, and I love him to this day because he was a loving man. He's a hard-working man, an honest man, but he didn't mind discipline, and I'd fight for him today if anybody said anything about my father.
Wow.
And I think children to learn respect for their parents and those in authority. They'll learn to respect the school teacher. They'll learn to respect the police officer. They'll learn to respect laws. They'll learn to respect God. And I tell some people, I say, listen, I believe in hell because my daddy whipped it out of me because I was something else. But I thank God for him every day.
Yeah. So
and I love him to this day for what he did.
All right, Terry. Listen, that's a great call, and I appreciate that because, you know, what Terry's call proves, you know, the meme out there on the left is you spank kids are going to hate you. It's a form of child abuse. Everybody hates child abusers. Your kids are going to hate you. It's going to be an act of violence. They're going to resent it. They're going to rebel against it. And here's Terry, loves his dad to this day. You could hear it in his voice, the love and admiration and affection he has for a dad who loved him enough to discipline and, drive the folly that was bound up in his heart right out of him. Well, great call, Terry. Thank you for that. Let's go to Mark in Copper Cove, Texas. Mark, welcome to Focal Point with Brian Fisher. What's on your mind?
Mark in Copper Cove, Texas.
Hey, Mark. Mark, you there?
Hey, how you doing, Brian?
Good. Did you turn your radio down so we don't get any interference?
Okay.
Okay, great. I don't want anything to distract us from our conversation. Go right ahead.
All right. Hey, I kind of tuned in as you were reading the scriptures in reference to the discipline.
Yes.
And I totally agree with first the word and then with you also. And I think the problem is these days we have three problems. The parents are younger. They don't believe in discipline, and there's too many agencies getting involved with the parents' right to discipline their children. And you get these kids that go to school, and the teachers can't control them, the parents can't control them, and it's out of control. I'm 45 years old. I grew up in a single-parent home, and my mother believed in discipline. Discipline is totally different from child abuse.
Absolutely.
And there's some things that I got away with from my mom, and I probably should have gotten a few more spankings growing up. But spankings, I discipline my children. I never come home because I had a bad day, and I take it out on my children. That's something totally different.
Absolutely.
So I'm really surprised that California went along with the fact that it wasn't child abuse.
Yeah.
And like I said, the parents want to be these children's friend. They don't need you to befriend them. They need you to parent them. As they grow older, they'll learn to be your friend, and also from a distance. But they don't need a friend in their parent. They need somebody to discipline them and teach them the way. It says, train up a child in the way that he should go, and when he's old, he will not depart. And I'll hang up and listen offline.
All right, great, Mark. That's a great call. And speaking of the schools, by the way, this is why we have so many behavioral problems in schools, and I feel for teachers. I mean, I've probably got a lot of people that are married to public school teachers that are listening to me right now, maybe some public school teachers that are listening to me, and I am in absolute total sympathy with the challenges you have trying to maintain some kind of order in the classroom so you can actually teach and so your students can actually learn. I mean, maintaining an atmosphere of order in a classroom so learning can take place is a huge challenge. And I have talked to family members and to school teachers who have to fight that every single day, and they don't have the tools to maintain discipline and order in the classroom. They don't have a learning environment because all the tools that enable them to do it have been taken away from them. And one of them is corporal discipline. And I want to tell you, we are not going to have a functional education system where kids are actually learning. You're not going to have an environment conducive to learning until we bring corporal discipline back into our elementary schools, into our public schools. That is the only way you're going to be able to maintain kind of environment in the classroom where kids can actually learn something. It's still legal in most states. Schools can do it. They can administer corporal discipline by law. It's permissible by law, but most schools are afraid to do it because of lawsuits and all that kind of stuff, and so they simply do not do it. And I remember when I was, I think it was kindergarten or first grade, and we had a kid in our class that acted up one day, and our teacher, her name was Miss Barnes. I still remember her, matronly woman, kind of round and stout. And this kid misbehaved. She made him stand up in his chair, and she took out this yardstick, that 36, the 36-inch kind of yardsticks, literally a yardstick they would have in the classrooms. And man, she made him stand up so that his seat was above the back of his chair. And man, she just hauled off. I mean, it was like A-Rod going after a fastball. And she just whack. And she snapped that kid so hard in the fanny that the ruler broke. And I still remember that thing, like in slow motion, spinning through the air of the classroom. And I mean, we were all in shock. I mean, our eyes were as big as Frisbees. Look at this. And that was like the first week of school. And I will flat out guarantee you nobody, I mean nobody, crossed Miss Barnes the rest of the year. And what does that mean? That meant we learned something. That meant that she could teach us. Wasn't a bad thing. It was necessary for the student and good for the class. Had one other thought that was triggered by that last caller, and it escapes me. If I think of it, I will be sure and share it. Let's go to Deborah in Hickory, North Carolina. Deborah, welcome to Focal Point. What's on your mind?
Oh, dear. Thank you so much for having me on. I just want to speak that I don't have children, but I was a child. And I just love and miss my parents dearly. And was with them and before they went on to be with the Lord. And I have studied the Proverbs this past few short years, praying that I could lead other people to the Proverbs as well as to the Lord. And when I think of that man that said, train up a child in the way he should go, not the way he would go, and when he's old, he will not depart from it, is something very special to study, because a child is to be initiated in the way of life from the earliest dawn of his intelligence. And 2 Timothy 1:5 speaks of that. And children are, I'm reading from the Jameson Brown Fawcett Bible Commentary. Childhood is pliable, maturity is hard and unimpressible. The seed sown in childhood may seem lost for a time, but if it have been sown in faith, it will develop itself when he is old. Timothy, taught in Scripture as a child, was not fully converted till he was a man, 1 Timothy 1:2. The seed is to be sown in youth. The harvest is not to be expected till manhood. So, if we study these Proverbs and the teachers and the preachers and our family or the mothers, the virtuous woman who is the mother, speaks not only of things of the household and how much work she has to do, but to speak about God to these children will pass it on to their peers. They will not forget it. And if they fall or sin, I would say, they can get up and get righted.
All right, well, that's a great call. I appreciate that call very much, Deborah. Thank you for that. And I remember the other story I was going to tell you. When my kids were younger, this is when we were using other forms of discipline like times out or revoking privileges or whatever, or we would just say no to something they wanted to do that we know wasn't a healthy thing for them to do. It had risks involved that we thought were unacceptable, and they would complain and they would gripe and they would moan, and And so I would be leaving their bedroom door at night after we'd be having this conversation. They were obviously grumpy and unhappy with me. And I said, look, my purpose in life as your father is not to give you a happy childhood. My purpose as your father is to turn you into a mature, responsible adult. And I would say it nicer than that, but that's what I would communicate to them. And then I'd get to the door and I'd peek back in and I'd say, oh, by the way, in case this question ever comes up in the future, you are having a happy childhood. All right, let's go to Sarah, Tyler, Texas. Sarah in Tyler, Texas, welcome. The Focal Point, what's on your mind? Got about 45 seconds.
Oh, my goodness, that's not enough time.
Well, Sarah, I'll tell you what. Well, you get started. If we need more time, I'll hold you over the news, all right? So go ahead and get started.
Okay, I just wanted to call in and actually share my story with you because you were talking about social services and how your mind was just blown by some of the things that were going on in California with that one case you're talking about with the lady with the wooden spoon. Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to call and tell you about, I grew up in California, and I just wanted to share my story about, honestly, I believe that CPS has way too much power. They just have way too much. They overuse it, and it's very scary.
Well, Sarah, I really want to hear your story, and I want our listeners to hear it. Do you have 5 minutes? Can you hold on over the news break?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Okay, great. Well, I'll get back. We will come right out of the chute with you after the news because I want to hear your story, and I know our listeners do too. So, Sarah, to talk about her experience in California, way too much power in the Child Protective Services. I completely, absolutely, totally, 100% agree, and it sounds like we may hear an illustration of that when we come back. You're listening to Focal Point, AFR Talk. Be right back. Stay with us.